Welcome to the Living Big podcast, where we're all about embracing life to the fullest. Hey, I'm Marlie.
And I'm Kylie, and we're thrilled you're here. We explore how to pursue our passions, nurture meaningful connections, and inject some serious fun into our lives.
We're here to show you you're not alone.
And we want to do what we can to ease the stresses of everyday life and help you in your journey of living big.
Hello and welcome to Living Big. We're so excited that you're here. We're going to have, I think, a really special episode.
Yeah.
Kind of memorializing some sweet, important memories for us. We're going to talk about our birth stories today.
Yay!
So sit back, maybe grab some popcorn because there are some ups and downs on this roller coaster. I think for both of us.
Oh, yeah. I think for every woman, honestly,
Oof.
you need some popcorn.
Yeah. Baby makes
way to
its way into the earth. That's a ride.
It's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
So big.
Yeah. We do want to just give a little disclaimer before we get into it too far, that these are our personal stories. None of this is medical advice.
No.
Also, just because we had this experience doesn't necessarily mean you will also have this experience.
Yeah. Everyone is different.
Exactly. Everyone is entitled to the experience that they have bringing a baby into this world.
Well, and not only that, we were kind of hesitant when we first started the podcast. We actually received some requests for this topic.
Mm-hmm.
People were like, we want to hear your birth stories. And we were a little bit hesitant at first because it's a huge topic, and we don't want to give off the wrong impressions, and we don't want this to be where we're like ragging on some of the harder experiences or glorifying parts that maybe were hard for other women and all this stuff. So we really like kind of went back and forth on, should we do this, should we not? And ultimately, with our podcast being these bestie chats and also being about our passions and, you know, our connectivity with our families, each other, with you guys and everything, a huge, huge part of who we are came through these really important experiences. And birth is a huge, huge transition and an amazing experience. Yeah. It's a huge part of our life and our stories.
Right. It's
a huge part of who Marlie is. It's a huge part of who Kylie is, like who we are sitting here in front of you today. Right. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not the same person now that I was before I had participated in birth twice. Yeah. And so ultimately, I think we felt like we want to record these stories for history. Yeah. And to share these things because they can be so beautiful. They can be inspiring. They can also just help us like relate to each other, get through the hard, remember those moments. And like we said, it's a huge part of who we are.
Yeah. I would not be who I am sitting here right now. I probably wouldn't even be sitting here right now. Yeah. Had I not gone through some of the things I went through. Yeah. Because of birth. Yeah. That may be a bold, big claim, but it's true for me personally. Yeah. I would not be the person I am. Yeah. Without those experiences.
And I really feel like every birth is so unique and so special. And it's just honestly fun to hear people's experiences. Yeah. If you are about to give birth and it's stressing you out to hear other people's stories, skip on through. You can come back to this at a later date. Like it's going to be here for you if you want it or if you don't. But like we said, like this is a pivotal part of who we are. And so we want to celebrate our unique and special stories and let you guys in on it a little bit as well.
I love that. Oh my goodness. I'm definitely excited, a little bit nervous, a little anxious. But overall, I feel really blessed to be able to tell you my stories, and I'm excited to hear Kai's stories and have you all hear them. So like I said, sit back, grab some popcorn because it's a ride.
It really is. Okay. Well, I think we should just kind of jump in.
Okay. Let's do this.
Marlie had a baby first, so we're going to start with you today. Just kind of talk about your birth story.
Okay. So I have 2 kids. I first got pregnant in 2020. We all know what happened in 2020. A baby boom happened in 2020. I swear. I was part of that. I fell victim to that. So what happened was my husband got a salary and I was like, cool, we're stable enough to have a child. Let's do this. And then all of a sudden COVID hit, right? And I'm seeing that people are having babies alone in hospitals. Like they can't have any person with them. That they have to wear masks, that they are completely isolated, secluded, terrible. Okay?
To anyone who had a baby during that period.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry you had to do it that way.
Ugh. Heartbreaking to think of the injustice that happened during that time. Like it was torturous, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, like borderline abusive to those poor mothers trying to have babies. Trying to do one of the physically hardest things there is to do.
Yeah.
Is to not only, push a baby out of your body, but like also to, grow a human, do any of that when you're going through so many emotions and hormones and all of it, ups and downs before and during and after. Woo. Those women are actual superheroes. So, yeah. So that was kind of the climate I went in to have a baby with. And then I was due with my first Leo in the end of January, January 24th.
So you barely made it into 2021.
Yep. So COVID was fresh and thick at the time. Anywho, yeah, so pregnancy-wise, things were great. I wasn't like crazy sick. I just had like, kind of some basic nausea and things like that. And then I was working full time. And I think that helped maybe because I was like running around on my feet all day, every day. And it kind of distracted me, I think, from being super pregnant by the end there. There were a lot of things going on in my personal and family life at the time. And so I was pretty stressed when I was going into like the very end of my pregnancy. And it was a lot. It was a lot. My great-grandfather got COVID and passed away because of it really, really quickly. And I lived with him at the time. It was me and my husband kind of taking care of him. And my husband got COVID and he was really sick. And so it was mostly me, uber duper pregnant, helping my grandfather as he was passing away, basically. Great-grandfather, I should say. He was also 102 years old, so he was very old. It was just sad that he had passed away that way. And he passed away after my due date. So I hadn't gone into labor just yet. And my family was in town and they were all like, when are you going to have this baby? So then I went and got induced. And I was 41 and 2 when I went into the hospital, 41 and 3 when I had my baby. I was almost 41 and 4 because I had Leo at a little after 11:30 p.m. the next day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we got induced. I chose my OB because a friend of mine had used him. He was at a smaller group. It was just him and one other OB at this group kind of thing. And he came highly recommended. And I was like, sweet, I don't know anything. I had done kind of some research beforehand, kind of wanted to be a little bit crunchy, but not crazy crunchy, I guess. I was like, I'll try to go natural. I'll try to do all these things, whatever. I was hoping to go into labor by myself, and then that just never happened. Going 10 days overdue is a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess technically 11. I never really thought about that, I guess, because I went in when I was already 10 days over to get induced, and then I had him like at the 11th. It's fine. Whatever the case, yeah, we went in the evening on Monday the 1st, and we had dinner with my family. They were in town just waiting for me to have baby. And it was my brother's birthday the next day. And so we were like kind of celebrating, and we were like, okay, we're going to go eat dinner, and then we're going to go to the hospital and have a baby. So that's kind of what we did. Went to the hospital. They got me all checked in, whatnot. They did have to do like a rapid COVID test. And then we both tested negative, me and my husband. And then they were like, cool, so you don't have to wear masks. And I was, thanking the Lord for that one. I was really happy that I was able to at least have my husband there. I don't know if I would have been able to handle that. I think I maybe would have had multiple full-blown meltdowns.
Panic attacks.
Yeah.
I would definitely would have.
Yeah. Yeah. So we get to the hospital around 7 p.m., maybe 8 p.m., something like that. And they get us all checked in. We've got our little room. This is where we're going to have the baby. And then they're like, okay, this is how we induce people. First, we start with Cervidil, which is kind of like a medicated paper that's almost kind of like a tampon or something, and they shove it up next to your cervix, and it's supposed to ripen your cervix and all that one stuff. Also, we're going to say all the anatomically correct words. Yeah. Some maybe not anatomically correct words, but it's, you got to laugh about it if you can't.
We might say hoo-ha.
Right.
Just because that's funny.
That's my favorite. But yeah, so they said that I was not super dilated. They said that I wasn't super effaced. And so they're like, we're going to do this, and it's going to help ripen your cervix. I had done a little research beforehand, and I was like thinking, can I do a different induction method? I really wanted to do like the Foley balloon, which is where it like fills with saline and it physically opens your cervix, kind of thing. Really wanted to do that. Exactly. And they were like, no. I was like, oh, okay. I had talked with my OB beforehand, and this should have been a red flag. This was poor little people pleaser Marley at the time. Oh my gosh, it was so bad. And I had said to my doctor, I've got a birth plan. When do we talk about that? This was probably like, I don't know. I was maybe 38 weeks at the time.
Oh, wow.
When I had a conversation about this, because he never ever talked about it. And, he just comes in. He's like, cool, you're good to go.
Heartbeat looks great.
Yeah, that's it. You feeling him kick? I'm like, yeah. Cool, let's listen to heartbeat. Okay. Everything looks to be where it's supposed to be. Okay. It's terrifying, really. Also, like when you find out you're pregnant, you can find out when you're pregnant like pretty early on, I feel like. But you got to wait weeks before you're like allowed to go to the doctor to double check.
Yeah.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's miserable.
Yeah, I kind of hate it. Anyhow, because you just have no idea what's going on in there, and you hope that it's okay.
Yeah.
So I had a conversation, like I said, at like 38 weeks with my OB. Usually you go like 40 weeks. You can generally be elective induced at 39 weeks kind of thing. Mm-hmm. He was trying to push me to get induced at 39 weeks. I did not want to be induced. I wanted to go natural.
Right.
And he was like, watch the video online for the hospital that is the standard of care. And I was like, okay. Not getting the hint that he's like, this is how I deliver babies, and that's
like,
it.
I have one way.
Right.
I'm not talking about your birth plan. I'm telling you my birth plan.
Right.
Is what he was saying.
Exactly. Yeah. So I wasn't getting that hint. So when I get to the hospital and I'm like, oh, I know that there's 5 other ways that you can induce me, or you can start induction to help with my cervix. So that way when you do other methods, it might be a little more effective or whatever. And they were like, no, we don't do that.
You're like, oh, great.
So
thanks.
do you not believe in science? Like all the other science says you can do these things, but you can't.
I believe in science.
I know. So I was a little taken aback. But again, people pleaser Marley, didn't understand at the time. And I could not sleep at all. The Cervidil was extremely uncomfortable.
Oh, I'm sure.
It just made me super duper crampy. I had to pee a lot because you have to pee a lot when you're pregnant.
Yes.
And every time I had to get up from the bed to go pee, I had to unhook myself because
that is the worst part about being induced.
I hated it. I was hooked up to everything.
so attached.
So attached.
And you do have to pee all the time. And you're just like, can somebody give me a diaper or something?
Right.
Because I don't know.
You do. I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe the cramping is like everything is being cramped, including your bladder.
Well, yeah, because you're contracting. Mm-hmm. I'm like, it's like natural, but
yeah. So then I didn't sleep at all. At all.
Which is great in preparation for the long haul.
Right. Yeah, I stayed up all night. And at 6:00 the next morning, they came in to check to see if I had been more effaced, and I had not.
Oh, no.
Was no more dilated, no more effaced. The Cervidil did 0. Cool. So then my doctor comes in and he breaks my water, and I just remember that being
at that point, without you being any more dilated.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It was so painful, you guys. Oh my gosh, it hurt so bad. That was like one of the worst parts, was him breaking my water. What they do is they take like a little hook, and they kind of hook it into the amniotic fluid sac, and then pop it. It just is basically a water balloon that they're just popping, okay?
But especially if you're not dilated.
No.
Because
I was maybe like half a centimeter.
Your water breaking, I mean, that pushes you into the next stage of labor,
right,
usually, and so it gets way more intense. But usually at least you're like open and dilated, and your body's going that direction.
Right.
Yeah, that's really hard.
Yeah. I have had my waters broken with my second one, and I was, I don't know, 5 or so centimeters at the time.
Yeah.
Easy peasy breezy. Yeah. It was so easy. Also, the lady who was doing it, the midwife that was doing it the second time around, she was just like way nicer. He was just like, I felt like his entire fist up in there. I hated it. It was the worst thing. It was so uncomfortable.
So nice.
Anywho, so broke my water, started me on Pitocin, and then there's like very specific protocols for how much and how often they have to titrate the Pitocin for you. Okay, so this is very, very clearly how this man gets babies into the world. Is he does Cervidil, breaks your water, gives you Pitocin on, at a certain amount on the hour, every hour, right? I think it's every half hour that they titrate more, up to like 40 milligrams or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you start with 16, you go up to 40. You get like every half hour, you're getting up to more.
My doctor refused to go up past a certain amount.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Exactly. Some doctors won't even go past like 8.
That's my doctor.
That's nuts. 40. Okay, cool. Ooh. So I was like, nah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go as far as I can without any sort of medical, or without any sort of, I should say epidural. I just didn't want the epidural. I don't know. I was scared to get a big old needle in my back. Anywho, so I started contracting because of the Pitocin. I was doing pretty well being able to manage the contractions as they got stronger and longer and quicker and blah, blah, blah. And then about 8 hours into Pitocin contractions, I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, because they're like, you're pretty far away. You're only like at a 2 or 3.
Oh, after so long.
8 hours.
With your water broken.
Yeah. I was like, I'm really tired. I need some energy to be able to push this baby out of me. So then I ended up getting the epidural. And then I was able to sleep at that point. Oh my goodness. I was able to get some rest. I remember we watched like an episode of Bachelor. It was great. And I was able to just like be myself and have energy and be okay. They don't really let you eat, or at least they didn't. Again, he births babies very specifically. Anyhow, so then I am doing great as the contractions are happening and I can't feel them. Getting the epidural really wasn't that bad at that moment. And then at about, I don't know, 10:30 at night or something like that, they're like, okay, you're at a 10 or you're at like a 9. You're getting really close. We tried different positions to help open things up. What really helped was like laying on my side, and I had a peanut ball in between my legs. And then, you're just like dripping on everything constantly after they break your water. So yeah, I was pretty comfortable at about, let me see, what time does that put me at? I think I got Pitocin started at like 7 or 8 in the morning, and then 8 hours from there. I don't know. It was like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, something like that.
Yeah.
maybe later, 4 in the afternoon, something like that, is when I got the epidural. And then, around 10:30 p.m. is when they were like, let's do some practice pushes. The nurses were amazing. They came in, were helping me do some practice pushes. I had told them, though, beforehand that I wouldn't be able to push on my back because anytime I was laying on my back, I'd pass out. And so I'm telling them this, and they're like, that's not going to work for your doctor. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean I can't push on my back? Like, I'm going to pass out. Like, I don't have any way of controlling that. It just kind of is what it is. You have nerves, and you've got arteries, you've got all these things, right where your baby is sitting. And if your baby is squishing them, cutting circulation off, I don't know. Anywho, so
also, if that doesn't work for you, that doesn't work for you.
Yeah. Even
like if that works for some women, that's awesome.
Right. Even if you don't really want to birth like that, you shouldn't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Crazy thought, I know. Anywho, so then I, at about, 10:30, when we're doing the practice pushes, they're saying I'm at like a 10. They're like, oh my gosh, like we can see his head even. And I'm like sitting upright at the time, which was it felt pretty decent. That wasn't too bad. And then as we're doing the practice pushes, I'm starting to like feel a lot more. And I was getting really uncomfortable. So they're like, if you need more, you just like hit the epidural button. I'm like, okay, cool. So I did that. Waited 30 minutes. Nothing happened. So I hit it again, waited another 30 minutes. That puts me at 11:30. Maybe it's like 10 and then to 11 kind of. At that point, I'm no longer able to see or hear anything that's going on because I am feeling everything. And they're like, you're just feeling pressure. And I'm like,
no, it's more
screaming.
Than pressure.
I'm vomiting. I'm screaming. I am completely outside of my body at this moment. And they had called the doctor because I was at a 10 and we were doing good with the practice pushes, blah, blah, blah. My doctor comes in there. He's all gowned up or whatever. And he's like, what is going on? And they can't get me under control is what's happening. And my husband is yelling at people that they need to figure out what's wrong with me. Here's what was going on with me is Pitocin was all the way up. I had one sustained contraction for about an hour and a half. There was normally when you have contractions, you get contraction at the like peak. You can kind of feel it coming on. It hits the peak. It's there for the peak for like a few seconds and then it goes down. And then you get a few seconds of break, especially like at the 10 when you're fully dilated, your body's about ready to push. Right. You feel it coming on. It hits the peak. You're like, oh, I can breathe through this for a few seconds. And then it lets go. Okay. And then it's gone for a few seconds, right? For up to like a minute and a half kind of thing. 45, 30, it's like a 30-second to 90-second interval kind of thing. So you get a break in between. And a lot of women just like fall asleep in between and they can breathe through and they're okay. I had none of that. It was just contraction, sustained. That was it. Just my body clenching so freaking hard to push this baby out. But it was unnatural because it was the Pitocin, which Pitocin.
And they had you on a huge dose.
Huge dose Pitocin.
Way too much Pitocin.
It also, Pitocin makes your contractions way harder and more intense. And they're mean. I say that Pitocin just can be mean. It's just, hate it. So they're trying to get me under control, and I'm telling them that the epidural is not working. It has worn off. It's doing nothing at this point.
And every time you're pressing it, you're like, it's not
better. Doing anything. Anywho, so they wet a rag with cold water, and they're putting it all over my body, and I'm like, I'm feeling that. Specifically, they put it on like my thigh, they put it on my lower stomach, things like that where you're not supposed to be feeling stuff. And I'm like, I am feeling that. That is freezing cold. And they're like, oh, you're not supposed to feel that. And I'm like, I told you, something's wrong.
You're like, so I knew.
So they get another anesthesiologist in there. He comes in there, he pulls out the other epidural, and he's like, oh, it wasn't in your back, actually. I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah. Anywho, so he yanks that out, puts a new one in. 10 minutes later, I'm like, sweet, let's have a baby. Yanks it out, puts a new one in. 10 minutes later, I am 100% good to go. That epidural. So
that's all that needed to happen.
Yeah. He kicked in that epidural, and it kicked in really well. It really, really did.
And you're like, relief.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And then I was able
relief.
to think
Yeah.
and not scream or vomit, you know? It was great.
Yeah.
So I
Did they also turn your Pitocin down at that
Nope.
point? Why? You're already at a 10. Okay.
I
won't
know.
ask questions
I
because
know.
I don't have the doctor in front of me
Yeah.
to interrogate.
Right. Anyway, so then we have the baby. We have Leo at 11:30 something in the at night, and he was born on February 2nd, so it's the same day as my brother's birthday. So that's kind of cool. And then after that, everything was okay. I like healed up pretty good and didn't really have any issues with that. I just really had a hard time with the induction process, with the lack of I don't know, just the lack of collaboration and teamwork with me kind of taking point on pushing a baby out of my body.
Yeah.
We did have issues with the doctor when I went to go push, and they were like, cool, let's lay you on your back and put your feet up in the stirrups. I think stirrups are of the devil. Here's the thing. Maybe I had done too much research before. I don't know. If you don't want to know about birth, that's fine. You can go in and have a birth that a doctor is very experienced at, and they're going to take care of you. I had maybe too much information going into birth, and I was like, I know that it's best, quote unquote, to like have a baby on hands and knees. I'm not going to say that anymore, but I was just like adamant at the time that I have to have this baby on my hands and knees, and I was going kind of crazy about it there at the end.
I mean, you're in a situation where at that point, like, there's been so much going on.
Right.
You're just like, I want this baby how I want it. Okay.
Right. Like, let me have something that I was in control of. No, they can't even do that. So yeah, we ran into issues with that where my doctor put me on my back, and I had told him as he's trying to like lay me down, I'm like, dude, I can't do this because I will pass out. So then when I passed out, he's like, what's wrong with her? And I'm like, sir, you're not doing your job.
I think it's so hard too with doctors. I used to be really trustworthy of doctors, and then I've had a lot of health challenges in my life that have led me the opposite direction, sometimes to my detriment. But if you don't know that, like, this is your first experience with birth, you go in, you like, I think I can trust this doctor.
Yeah.
Like,
My friend had an amazing experience.
yeah, and that's so awesome for her to have that with that doctor. But you probably didn't even know what questions to ask or what to advocate for yourself for, because you probably just trusted that he would take care of you.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And that he would listen to you, and that you could have the things that you wanted. Whereas like now you're like, I know to ask the doctor, are you going to allow me to have any control?
Right.
And if not, then you're not the doctor for me.
Yeah.
But at the time, it's like, it's so hard if you've never had one of those experiences. Like you think you can trust medical professionals, and you can. I'm not saying you can't, but that makes it really hard.
Yeah.
If you go in there trusting and thinking you're going to be able to do it a certain way.
Well, what's so funny is I had this moment where I'm like losing my ever loving brains. I'm not a human at that point. And I remember him saying like, well, we just need to do a C-section. I'm like, that makes no sense. Like, how did your brain go from I'm screaming because I'm in pain to, yeah, let's just cut her open right now? What? I don't know. My husband, he had his brain together. I'm so glad, because he was like, now we need to figure out her pain management. Like, what's going on? And they're like, you're just feeling pressure. And I'm like, go jump off a cliff.
If this is pressure, then
maybe I'm a wimp, but whatever, you know.
No.
It doesn't matter. What you're feeling is what you're feeling, and they need to listen to that.
And they should at least, like, what's the harm in like leaning you forward and double checking your epidural and like,
well, it was still technically
turning you over, and
it was
like,
still technically in my back, like the
but
tube
what I'm
was
saying
there.
is like have the anesthesiologist come in
Come and
sooner.
look at it. Yeah.
Or there's like so many things they can do.
Yeah. Anywho,
I'm so sorry.
Yep. So I was passing out the entire way giving birth or whatever. So there was that. Also, he was having a hard time getting him over my coccyx, you know, the little tail bit you've got, your tailbone. So he was like, let's do a hymenectomy. So he cut me a little bit, also used a vacuum, all of that. And these were things that I just like didn't even think about. And now looking back, I'm like, he did this for his own convenience. He did this because my body wasn't pushing the baby out fast enough, wasn't maneuvering in a way that
he was used to,
that he wanted. Yeah. There were so many people in the room as well. Like right when the doctor walked in, a bunch of people walked in with him. Before then, I had probably 5 people because there were a bunch of nurses that were like doing clinicals and like they were in school. They were, you know, becoming nurses. There was a poor little nurse there who was 6 weeks postpartum, and she was like, "Yeah, this was my doctor too." Oh my gosh, this girl,
bless her,
bless her nether regions and her feet and the rest of her body for
being there.
Yeah, I don't know how. I don't know if she got any time off after having a baby and then going in and doing clinicals. I don't know. But I think back at that and I'm like, I'll say a little prayer for her every time. But
yeah.
Ugh. Anywho, so it just overall was not the birth experience I had hoped for, but I also wasn't quite prepared. And I was too people pleasery. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. My husband didn't know how to advocate. There were just so many things going into it that we were like, we don't really know.
It's really hard. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so sometimes like I don't want to say that no one has a super smooth first experience. Right. I know that there are people who do.
Yeah.
But like your body doesn't even know what it's doing
right
at the first time. So it's just a huge learning curve all the way around, mentally, emotionally, physically, you with that doctor, like all of it, like it's big.
Yep. And like I said, I healed up pretty fine from it. I, you know, went to my 6-week appointment. He's like, cool, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it was fine. It just, the actual birth process was not, it didn't involve me.
Yeah.
It didn't involve any sort of control on my part. And rather than like even the physical pushing out of my baby, instead of him being like, oh, let's get you into a better position to be able to get this baby up and over your tailbone, or, you know, let's try something. Nah, it was no, let me cut you. Let me use a vacuum because he's not coming out fast enough for me. So just weird things like that, you know?
I'm glad Leo was healthy.
Yeah. I should say that. Extremely grateful that my son at the time, he was a little baby, but, you know, he was born very healthy. He was not so much a newborn because he was, you know, 11 days overdue.
Yeah.
So he was not as like
Newborny.
Little and squishy and newborny, I guess.
Not
you know,
alien-y.
He came out really cute and he had so much hair and everyone was obsessed with him.
One of my favorite stories that you told me right after you had him is that you said that your nurses called him like a little skater boy.
Yeah.
Because he had so much dark, thick hair.
Well, they put the beanies on him, right? Because they can't regulate their body temperatures. And he's got all this dark hair sticking out the bottom already. And it was, he looked like Pete Wentz.
So cute.
It was so cute. Yep. No, fun stuff.
So how do you feel like the long-term impact of that birth experience had on your life and motherhood?
Ooh. That moment was pivotal for who I am as a person. Like bringing my own child into the world, it kind of made me never want to let someone treat me like that again.
Yeah.
Not just in like a birth context, but like in general. And I started making decisions and being more vocal and just different things in general, within relationships, random experiences, whatever. It did not have to deal with birth. Just like in general, I became a different person in that moment.
Like you started taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
More outwardly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just being more vocal. Yeah.
That's a cool takeaway from a really hard experience.
Yeah. I stopped being as people pleasery.
Yeah.
I ask better questions. I mean, my second birth was way better because I knew which questions to ask, obviously. And I was able to go with a provider that was a lot more respectful of my desire to be in control of certain situations. But overall, I became a different person the moment Leo entered the world. Yeah.
That is so beautiful.
Crazy to think about. But yes, my life was put on a completely different trajectory. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. So amazing.
Yeah.
We love Leo.
Oh, it's just like,
I know.
That's so cool to think about.
I know.
So cool to think about.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
Like it can't really be put into words.
No.
That experience, I feel like.
Yeah. I don't think I could ever fully explain what that moment was like. And I don't know if it was just the birth or if it was also events that had led up to the birth, like my great-grandfather, who I was very close to, passing away. I don't know.
I feel like it isn't ever just one thing. Because then in the days after, like you trying to figure out who you are as a mom, like that's a whole new experience, and trying to bond with a new human and like nourish them outside of your body, and you're like healing. Like there's so much that gets wrapped up into that, on top of everything else that was going on in your personal life and family life and, you know, all that stuff.
And it was for sure the catalyst.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's so amazing.
That was really long-winded.
Oh, I loved it. It was so good.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah.
The thing is like, I don't know. I honestly really appreciate when people ask me questions about my experiences with this specific thing, because like you said, like it is the most, at least for me, has been one of the most transformative experiences of my life.
Yeah.
And it has made me into a different human being, and for better or for worse. But like,
I think
it
better.
does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
I don't think you can go through something that powerful and that challenging without it changing you.
Right.
You know, and like changing you from the inside out.
Yeah.
And it is the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
Which is so beautiful.
Yep.
And crazy.
Yeah.
That we do that as human beings. I'm like, it's so cool. I love it.
Oh, I think it's incredible that we can create life, bring humans into the world.
Yeah.
And that women are the ones to do that.
Yeah.
Is nuts, I feel like.
I really feel so blessed to be a woman.
Really?
Yeah. To be able to do that. Like I genuinely, I'm like, that is like to have the nurturing, caring, like the divine differences between men and women. Like I feel so blessed to be a woman, and I wouldn't trade it. Personally, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty amazing.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I think it's so incredible. Yeah.
All right.
It. Your turn.
Okay.
Tell us your birth story.
So my first birth story with little Colette, I was due at the end of March. I guess I'll just give a brief overview of when I was pregnant. So Hiram and I struggled for a really long time to get pregnant, and we really wanted a baby. And we were doing all the things that we thought we could and were told we could do. I didn't get a ton of help from doctors. And then finally I wound up with a midwife who I really loved, and she helped us a ton. That led us down some like scary paths for a minute. For a minute, they were like, oh my gosh, your prolactin levels are up and you're not pregnant. So that's really bizarre. They thought maybe I had a prolactinoma, which is a tumor in your brain on the pituitary gland. So we had to go do all kinds of crazy things. And I was really blessed not to have that. But then I went to a reproductive endocrinologist and found out that I have atypical PCOS, maybe endometriosis. We didn't ever end up fully testing for that, but my entire life I've had vicious cycles, like throw up on the streets of Ukraine, vicious cycles, just absolutely horrible. So I've been on continuous birth control for most of my life, which has just kind of been like a Band-Aid because I didn't really know what all the problems were. Yeah. I knew that I had cysts when I was younger, and they would grow and they would explode, and it was so painful and all that stuff on my ovaries. And so I knew all of that going into it. I was really stressed. I was going to struggle to get pregnant. And then lo and behold, I struggled.
Right.
And I think some of that stress and some of my distrust with doctors and my other health challenges also contributed to, it didn't aid me is what I'll say. It contributed to like perpetual stress. And so Hiram and I had been trying for a long time. And then finally in 2021, we found out we were pregnant. And it was right when I was waiting to hear the results back for if I had a brain tumor. And so
that's bizarre.
It was like, I don't know how this is going to work and everything. Mm-hmm. And then it came back and all the stuff. Anyway, I was really, really grateful that we were finally able to naturally get pregnant without extra help. And they for first pregnancies, they usually want you to wait like a year or so. It had been I think it had been a little bit over a year and a half by the time we finally got pregnant. And I was really, really excited. Pregnancy was great. And Coley was due at the end of March. So we get to March and I really, really wanted to do everything natural. I had researched a ton. I had taken classes, paid for courses. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm a little bit sadistic. I think it's beautiful and amazing. Yeah. But I also was like, I need to like prove to myself.
Yeah.
I always do this. I'm like, I need to prove to myself that I can like do this hard thing. Women for generations have done this way, which all the power to those women and everyone who has done that. I think it's beautiful and amazing.
Millions and billions of women who have done this.
And I totally still believe in it. I really do. But I got to a point where at the end of my pregnancy, I started rapidly putting on weight, but not like normal. Mm-hmm. Like I'm eating the same. And I remember from 1 week to the next week, I had gained 9 pounds. Mm-hmm. And my doctor's like, my midwives were like, that's not super normal. But my blood pressure was still like good levels. And so they were like, I don't think it's preeclampsia, but like that's kind of usually a sign that something's not great. But I kept being like, I just want to go natural. I just want to go into labor by myself. I just want to do all these things. So we get to the point where I hit 40 weeks and I am pretty miserable, like extremely swollen. So swollen. My arms and my ankles and the nether regions and everything. Like I was like, this is not good. And so I finally was like, okay, I know I said I want natural, but let's do the induction. So I think I was 40 weeks in a few days. And I went in. They called me like 7 a.m. and they're like, hey, come get induced at 9. I was so excited that I forgot to eat anything. And I really should have eaten before I got to the hospital because they don't really let you at hospitals.
Hate that.
Like they'll give you some Jell-O or like some like clear liquids, like here's some chicken broth or whatever. But I was like, anyway, I wished I was just so excited. I was like, it's Christmas. Like, it's better than Christmas. Like, so we were so pumped. We went in April 1st, which is my husband's least favorite day. # Prank Queen episode. If you haven't listened to that, go listen to that and you'll get this reference.
So fortuitous that you almost had a baby.
And my husband's like, oh, she cannot be born on April 1st. Her whole life, people will be like, happy birthday, April Fools. I guess it's not your birthday. Do you even have a birthday? Like, and all this stuff. And so he was really worried for her. And I got that. But I also was like, I'm getting this baby out of my body. I don't care what day it is right now.
Right.
Like, I love you so much. And he was really worried because when we went in at 9 a.m., typically I know for first births, it can go really long.
Yeah.
But if we're there at 9 a.m., he was like, there's a chance. So like we have this baby on April 1st. There's a good chance.
There's a chance.
A good chance.
Well, so they started inducing me right at 6 a.m. and I had Leo before the end of the day.
Right. Yeah. So there's a chance.
It was a chance.
And I was already dilated. Okay. I was already effaced.
Good.
But we just wanted to speed things up. So I go in, they put me on Pitocin, and I was still really determined not to get the epidural. Because same thing, I was like, I actually wasn't worried about the needle in my back, but I was just like, I can do this by myself. I can do this unmedicated. Right. I was already medicated because I was on Pitocin.
Right.
And for me, since I was already dilated, we didn't have to do any of like the cervical dilation stuff. They just put me on Pitocin and they just cranked that bad boy up a little bit.
Yep.
And I was with the midwife group. I had some travel nurses there that day. So with their shifts and everything, there was like a lot of different people coming in and out. Things were going good. I held out till I was at like a 6 dilated. And I had been in there for 8-9 hours.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I start just absolutely throwing up my guts.
Yeah.
Because it's so much pain on the Pitocin.
I hate that.
And I'm like, this is disgusting. I'm like laying there, and same thing. I was just like kind of like in and out, like not like delirious, not really like there. And I kept telling my husband, like, don't let me get the epidural. I can do this. But I'm like not really lucid. And he's like, babe, I know you really want this, but we're already here medicated on Pitocin. It is different. And my husband like became a doctor that day. I think it was so funny because we had the travel nurses and stuff, and he kept being like, why is the Pitocin here? And like, should we up it? Should we turn it down at like different intervals, like watching my contractions? And he was being so cute and so invested. Awesome. And at that point, like they literally had to cut my gown off me because there was all kinds of stuff going on, and we had to like cut my bra off because I couldn't get it off over the stupid, the IV, all the things. You're hooked up to everything.
I hate that.
And I just can't. I'm not even throwing up anything because I hadn't eaten, and that was also I think part of the problem was like I like didn't have any strength or energy. You're like forced to like do this experience, and so finally I went back and forth, and I'm like, okay, let's get the epidural. And they come in and they give me the epidural, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be awesome, like sweet relief. And so for the first it like hits about 20 minutes after you get it. And at that point, I finally was like, oh, this feels great. Like, this is really awesome. And for about 30 minutes to an hour, I felt pretty good. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I am feeling all of the pain in one spot on the left side, like a hot spot. And I was like, it like felt like it was everything like directly in one spot, and it literally felt like someone took like a hot branded knife,
oh my gosh,
and was just plumbing it into my left side and just like twisting it around. And I was in so much pain. So they flipped me over, they're trying to get the epidural to go on the other side. Nothing's working. And I could feel everything on that side. And same thing, I could feel my legs, I could feel all the things. So something was not right.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what to expect or anticipate. I'm like, I don't know how epidurals work. I don't know any of this. I didn't like the anesthesiologist who had come in and done it. And so I was like, I'm not calling him back.
That's
like
a fair thing.
I don't want him to come back in here. And then, but I'm just like in a lot of agony. So they're flipping me. They keep putting that, the band.
There's a contraction monitor and then a heart monitor that you have to have on your belly.
And the heart monitor was doing just fine. But the contraction monitor, they kept being like, I don't know, is it broken? It's not measuring contractions, blah, blah, blah. And so luckily, I could feel all my contractions. So I was able to say, well, there's a contraction because the machine wasn't picking them up. So I'm like, actually, if the epidural had been working and the machine wasn't working, that would have been really, really hard for me to know when to push.
They need to get their crap together and get that machine working.
Or get a different machine. I don't know if it was just super I don't know.
Weird.
So anyway, I'm like really, really struggling at that point. But I was finally dilated all the way to a 10. And so they're like, okay, you're ready to start pushing. We're going to bring the midwife in here. Well, actually, she had been in and out like throughout the whole thing because that's what's different with OBs and midwives.
I only saw my OB for like the last 10 minutes.
You get a lot of care. And so she had been in and out. And at that point, like things are like still pretty normal. And then I get to a 10. They're like, okay, we're going to start pushing. And we begin that trek with me monitoring my contractions because the machine is not doing that. Me being in a lot of pain with one side being numb and not the other side. And that was just I was like, I would rather feel it all or none, but not this like middle ground because that's super annoying. So at this point, I have been there for over 13 hours and I'm finally at a 10. We're ready to do this thing. I begin pushing and it just like wasn't going great. And I had like practice pushes at home and like really felt like I knew what I was doing. And they said I was doing a good job, like based on like them watching me and everything. But Coley was making very minimal progress. And that was, my water was also broken. I forgot to say that way earlier. They broke it in the induction process. And so when you're pushing, you don't get a ton of breaks.
Yeah.
You have to have a lot of strength, and it's like push and then you take a small break. It's like breathe for a tiny like 10-20 second window, and then you push again. And I ended up pushing for 4 hours and 45 minutes. With literally like no breaks. Just kept going and going. And I'm grateful that they allowed me to do that, but it was also pretty terrible on my body. But I really, really, really wanted to have my baby vaginally, and I didn't want to have a C-section. So at 3 hours, that's usually when they cut you off and they say like, nope,
okay,
we're going to do other measures. We're either going to do a C-section, we'll try vacuuming, or we'll try using forceps. But with my swelling levels, they were really, really worried that if they put the forceps up in me or the vacuum, that they could lacerate my uterus because I was so swollen. They would have had to like jam them in there. And so my midwife was checking in with the OB who was over her. And since there was some progress and Coley's heart rate remained stable, they let me continue to try. So she's just in the birth canal for almost 5 hours.
So squished.
That poor baby. Like, it makes so much more sense later that she was so hard. I'm like, she was traumatized.
No.
Absolutely traumatized.
No.
I do think part of it was that, though, because I'm sure her body hurt. Like, just jamming into my tailbone. And she was traumatized because when she came out, she was covered in poop. She had pooped inside me, gotcha. Which shows trauma.
I mean,
for baby.
Mila had too, but they were like, I don't know why. It's just fine. So I don't know.
For Coley, they were like, this was very, very traumatic for her. But luckily, again, like she was so strong, her heartbeat remained really stable, so they let me keep trying. And the rule was just, if you get to a point, they're like, you can't be too tired. If you get to a point where you can't do it anymore, we're already too late. So they're like, you need to tell us when you have like 20% left, because then we need to go do the C-section, because you need energy for that. And so they were like,
why? People do it asleep completely. I'm confused.
I mean, I don't think they were going to put me to sleep. I don't know. But I think they were just worried about my health. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
But either way, they were like, no matter what, like, you need to tell us when you're at like 20%.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, I'm having this baby vaginally.
There's no other option.
Oh no. And so I was like, 20%, like I will just go till I'm dead.
Yeah.
In my head. Like I was like, that's not a thing. So they're like, can you be honest with us? And I was like, I will keep going. I will just keep going. And they're like, okay. So we kept going.
I feel like I must interject. When you put your mind to something,
yes,
you will win. It's that simple. You'll just do it.
I have a very, very strong will.
Yeah.
I'm very stubborn. So I kept pushing, and I remember I'm laying on my back, and Hiram has one leg, and one of the travel nurses is holding the other leg. They didn't even put me in the stirrups because almost 5 hours. It's a long time.
Yep.
And in between pushes, they would lay my legs down, and I would look up at Hiram, and I just remember at one point, like, he is just sobbing, which he doesn't do that a lot. And I just felt like so bad that this is the situation, you know? And anyway, and so I keep going, I keep trying to push, and I would literally pass out in between, just like pass out, and then it would be 10 seconds of break, and then I would push, I would come back and keep going, keep going. So I pushed. And same thing, they were like, I don't know if your anatomy is like not right. It's really hard to get first babies out very frequently for people because your body's never done that before.
Right.
It's not as open. And so they were like, I don't know, but like she's like stuck, and she kept like, she would make progress and then get like sucked back in. And so it was so frustrating because they kept being like, oh, that was really good, and then just not.
Yeah.
So at this point they said at the 5-hour mark, we will call it.
Okay.
So you will have a C-section. So we're at like 4 hours and 35 minutes. And I'm thinking in my head, like, I have like a half hour, probably more like 15 minutes, 20 minutes until they like make me do something else. And so I'm just like very, 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 very determined to like make it happen and push her out. And so I just started praying like, please, please, please. They cut me. They were trying to do all the things to make more room for her to get out. And they had the entire NICU team come into the room so that they would be 100% prepared for whatever outcome. Because she had been in there so long, they didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah. And the machine is still not monitoring contractions. They weren't sure how I was going to be because they let me go for a long time. And so we had probably 20 people in the room. Yeah. It was a lot of people. And my midwife, she labored with me like the entire time, like stood up and held my legs and like turned me over. Just, she was amazing. I absolutely adore her. And then finally, Coley comes out. And best moment of my life and one of the worst because she's not breathing. And I'm like, did I make a mistake? Should I have let them do something else? They take her over to the warmer and they're like trying to stimulate her, suck her, get the poop wiped off of her, make sure that's not like clogging up her lungs. Yeah. And she just nothing. No breathing. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, she's not crying. I'm like screaming because I'm like, why is she not crying? Why don't I hear her? And Hiram's trying to be over there and help the baby. And I remember my midwife pulls my placenta out. She shows it to me and I'm like, oh, the tree of life. I'm like so delirious at this point. And I just want my baby. And finally they lay Coley on my chest and they say, we have 1 minute. And then we're going to take her to the NICU and like try to help her breathe. But like you have 1 minute. So I'm holding her and the room, I just remember just like this like palpable stillness like came over me and her. I'm so sorry. This is like so much. And she finally takes like her first breath and on my chest. And I just was so grateful. They left her there and we got to do all the bonding and snuggles and breastfeeding and golden hours, they call it. It was awesome. And from that point on, like right after birth, I felt really good because she was there and we were safe and like everything was good. I mentioned here and there, and I won't get into tons of details because this is our birth story, but for me, the afterbirth experience was pretty bad. I think partially because I pushed so long, partially probably swelling. Maybe there was something underlying there, or I don't know. But I had retained placenta in my uterus, and we didn't know for 3 months postpartum. And so as I'm transitioning into being a mom for the first time, I just kept like getting worse and worse and worse. And I've heard from everyone that it's really hard, to heal from birth, but that each day gets better. And that was not happening. And I was super confused. Yeah. I was like, all of a sudden I would start standing up and I would get super dizzy. I would wake up with 104-degree fevers. I would like pass out. I couldn't hold Coley. I had like no strength in my arms at just like random points in the day. And I had agonizing pain in my back and different things like that. Like at one point I remember laying down and feeling like I was paralyzed, like I couldn't move and just like screaming for Hiram. So this went on for like 3 months and we finally figured it out, much to the doctor, the OB that I ended up going to, much to not his credit. We finally figured out what was going on. Right. And my family doctor saved my life, got me on antibiotics multiple times, gave me shots, and he didn't even know what was going on, but he's like, some kind of internal infection.
You basically had necrotic tissue.
Yeah.
Trying to kill you.
Infecting. And I'm really lucky that I didn't go full-blown septic.
Right.
And that all goes to my family doctor, because my OB and the midwives, as much as they were amazing during birth, had no idea what to do and no idea what was going on. And so that really scarred me, both how long the pushing experience was and then the aftermath. And so I was really terrified to have another kid.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know if my body will learn. I don't know if my body could do it. Like, what if I get that again? What if I retain placenta? What if I die?
Right.
Because multiple times throughout both the birth experience and then the aftermath, I'm like, that could have happened.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm like, this is like, it was so crazy. But I do remember just like the feeling of that real and raw power of birthing my baby girl. And ultimately, like, I'm so grateful for the experience and the things that it taught me. And so grateful to have her. Obviously, she's the best outcome of it all.
Yeah.
But it was crazy. It was a little bit intense for me.
What did that moment do for you when you became a mom?
Multiple things. I want to help empower other women to advocate for themselves. Because I don't think the transition to motherhood is so hard anyway. And I don't think anyone should have to do it in a like half-baked way, because no one's listening to them.
Yeah.
And like something's desperately wrong. And so kind of similar, like I am a big time people pleaser, but I'm like, I will find doctors. I will do whatever it takes. I will fight for me and my kids. Like, I don't want to let people walk on me. And if I can help any woman like not have a similar experience, that would be so phenomenal. So like push back a little bit when things don't feel right, and trust your intuition, because even though you might not know exactly what's going on with your body, like you're the one living in it. So you're not making it up. You're not just depressed. You're not stressed. You're not dumb. If they tell you that those symptoms aren't indicative of that being a problem or whatever, like if you feel like there's something, like push back or go somewhere else and get the help that you need.
We kind of talked about it even in a different episode with Stacy. I'm not sure order-wise.
Yeah. This will be after.
Okay, perfect. We talked about it a little bit with Stacy, that the system very much fails women after they have a baby, right? We get our one little 6-month or 6-week appointment, and that's it. Ugh, it is criminal, I think. It's criminal how poorly we take care of brand new moms.
Yeah.
Probably some of the most vulnerable people on the planet are brand new moms and brand new babies.
Yeah.
We take care of babies, but who's taking care of mom? Literally no one. And they for sure failed you.
Yeah.
I remember being privy to that whole situation and being so scared for whatever was happening to you, because no one knew what was going on, but you were dying.
Yeah.
You were actually dying.
Yeah.
It was pretty obvious.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how is it they just like let that go when it was so clear that you were dying?
To wear tighter underwear.
That makes no sense.
No. I look back, I'm like, tighter underwear? Like,
what?
How is that gonna work? Oh my gosh, it was the stupidest thing.
That's so stupid.
That and I really wish I wish that the day I woke up with my 104-degree fever, I had just gone to the hospital.
Yeah.
Because that's a pretty high fever for an adult.
That should have just been like an emergency room moment. Yeah.
For a baby, that's okay. I woke up, my teeth were chattering. I was in bed. I put a heated blanket on and everything, and I was just like violently shaking.
Yeah.
And I didn't go in. And I have a really hard time asking for help. Hiram was there when I had my fever, but later on, you know, like he had gone on a young men's camping trip. And that's when I ended up having to go into the hospital for an emergency ultrasound and things like that. But like, I had a hard time asking people like, hey, can you watch my baby? But I'm like, I can't pick her up. I can't get her out of the bassinet. And I just would like force myself to. And that's like pretty dangerous.
So dangerous.
If I'm like passing out and stuff. Like, but so that's why, like, honestly, this time around, I was just like, I'm going to tell people, I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to take note. I'm going to go to a different doctor. I did all of those things. Yeah. And it was a much better experience the second time around.
Yeah.
But I just, my main message is like to any of you out there, like, just use your voice.
Yeah.
And like, know your worth and your value. And even if you're stubborn and you have an iron will, just advocate for yourself, and like, it's okay to not be okay.
Right.
And it's okay to admit that, and it's okay to ask for help.
I really love also what you said about trusting your intuition, trusting your body. With my second birth, there was a moment when they were like, okay, you're only at like a 5. And I was feeling so tired, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to make it to a 10 without an epidural, because I'm so tired. It was like, I don't know, 2:30 in the morning at the time.
Yeah.
And I had come straight from a family reunion, and I was just really tired. I was just so tired. And I honestly think that's part of a birth experience, is that moment when you hit and you're like, I'm so tired. I think that's normal.
And when you're like, I can't do it.
Like, I think that's the moment right before transition.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, then I'll just get the epidural because I'm only at a 5. But I think that's that moment when I'm like, when they're like, you're only at a 5. And then it felt like I was hit by a ton of bricks, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Anywho, when they brought in the dude who was going to be putting in the epidural, I was for sure in transition.
Yeah.
In transition. And I remember telling them, like, I feel like I need to push. I feel like I am pooping myself kind of thing. And they're like, no.
Because you were just at 5.
Right. I was just at a 5. Maybe 10, 15 minutes before.
Yeah.
No, I was in transition because I went from a 5 to a 10 within 30 minutes.
Right. Which can happen.
Exactly. You just never know.
Yeah.
Only you know your body. And it's interesting to see how much you do actually know your body in that moment. You're like, nah. I just like tried to tell them. So then when they tried to put a catheter in me, because you have to have a catheter when you get an epidural, they couldn't even put it in because their head was almost out.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, and that was 30 minutes from the time that they said I was at a 5. 30 minutes from the time that I was at a 5, her head was almost out of my body by itself. I was doing nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just having contractions.
Right.
Anywho, so I do want to really echo what you had said. Advocate for yourself. You know your body best. Your body knows more than what we've maybe been conditioned to believe about birth. And it can absolutely be scary and exciting and unknown and all of that. But there are for sure moments where you feel incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
You feel so strong. You feel so like alive.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Is that not the coolest moment?
It really is. One of my favorite things after giving birth was going out into the real world afterwards, like right after, okay? I remember I went into the hospital to like check on Coley's bilirubin levels, and then I went to Walmart because I needed something from there, and I was walking around and I'm seeing all these people, and I'm like, every single person was born from a woman. And I felt like so much, I don't know, just like pride in being able to join those ranks, because I was like, this is insane. Like, we have humans? Like, this is insane.
I know. It's insane.
Every person you meet was born from a woman.
Yeah.
Women are freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Like, truly amazing.
I saw this really funny story it was Jane's story. If you know Jane, the Utah mom, we're obsessed with her. She's hilarious. Yeah. She's so funny. She just recently had a baby, and she had her baby completely unmedicated. This is her 3rd. She didn't know the gender or anything. She just like went all out for this baby. Yeah. And she just posted this really funny story today where she's got her baby like in a little bouncer kind of thing. And then she was like also pumping, and she's like with her foot pushing the bouncer and she's pumping, and she's like, it is so cool what we can do and how women can multitask.
Seriously.
It was insane. But it's just those moments like that you're just like, this is the coolest thing ever.
It really is. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's crazy.
One of I just have to read the scripture really quick because in preparation for this episode and thinking about birth, I just thought this was like so poignant. It comes from the Book of Mormon, Alma 36:21. It says, "There could be nothing so exquisite and so bitter as were my pains. On the other hand, there can be nothing so exquisite and sweet as was my joy."
Oof.
And I'm like, that is birth.
Yeah.
Like the epitome of pain and the epitome of joy.
Yeah.
Like so glorious and so crazy to partake in that journey.
I've never thought of that scripture in this moment, but that is, I don't know if there's a situation more applicable.
And I'm like, it captures it perfectly.
Yeah.
Like, it's so powerful.
Yeah. Because I don't know if you're closer to God.
Yeah.
Than in that moment when you're bringing a human into the world, other than maybe when you're with someone leaving this world.
Yeah.
Right. But even that's not the same.
No. And it is this like juxtaposition of like life and death.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not a medical emergency, but it's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
And intense. And like it can go different directions. And like you literally are giving all of you
right
to bring that life into the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that like it is probably the most spiritual experience that I've ever had.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When they put that baby on your chest, and if you haven't had that experience and you did have babies and things, that is the saddest thing to me. But that moment when they put your baby on your chest, your baby, your child on your chest, and you just get to like sync with them.
Yeah.
Ooh, that is the coolest thing.
And finally it's like what was inside you is like you can
real.
feel it and like snuggle it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So powerful.
I do think about friends that I've had who never got that moment, or my cousin that never got that moment, or things. It just, it's sad to think about that. I guess that birth is so varied and can be scary for some people, and is scary and is sad for a lot of people. I mean, I think about Andy and her experience. Oh my gosh, it's heartbreaking. It is. There are so many ways to have a baby. There are so many ways to get a baby out of your body. And everyone's experience is so different and unique.
And special.
And beautiful, incredible.
And sad and painful and all the things.
All of it. Oh my goodness. And it is a big deal every single time.
Yeah.
No matter what. Like, yes, it is a common occurrence, but it is a big deal.
Yeah.
Every time it happens.
It's the culmination of life. It's the period when you feel all of the emotions in one, like wrapped up.
Yep.
That's so crazy.
So crazy. What do we do now? Oh my gosh.
Like, should we talk about the other ones? Like you mentioned a little bit about your second, but
I mean, you've most recently had a baby.
Yeah.
And from what I observed, it seemed to be a lot better of an experience.
Yeah.
Maybe healed some past traumas.
Oh, yes. It was like so good for me.
I'd like to hear about some of the healed traumas for sure.
It was just leaps and bounds better and different. And it just felt peaceful. And that was the really cool experience with Augie's birth. Because I got there, we started on Pitocin at 3:30, and by 7:53, I was holding my baby in my arms.
PM. 3:30 p.m.
Yeah, 3:30 p.m. to 7:53 p.m.
So 3.5 hours. 4.5 hours?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, almost 8. So almost 5 hours. Well, no, 4.
Yeah. 4.5 hours.
4.5 hours.
Wow.
And it was awesome. Yeah, I got there and
that is so fast.
I chose to be induced at 39 weeks because we wanted to minimize the swelling that happened last time.
Right.
And I was starting to get more swollen in that last week again. So we were like, okay, let's just skip on past that and we'll just go straight in. My doctor was phenomenal. He took notes in front of me as I explained my previous experience and was like, I am terrified of these things. I don't want to repeat this. He was a great advocate, really, really awesome, really listened to me. And then got induced 3:30. I was like, okay, last time I tried not to do the epidural and it didn't really work on half of me, but I'm on Pitocin again. So what should I do? Ultimately, I was like, you know what? Let's get the epidural. As I was sitting up to get my epidural, all of a sudden I had this insane feeling that I was peeing myself. And I was so embarrassed, even though you're like naked on a bed, like in front of all these people. I'm like, nurse, I am definitely peeing myself. I'm so embarrassed.
That's awesome.
We hadn't been there very long. It'd been like maybe an hour. And so I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm peeing myself. And she's like, okay, honey, it's okay. Like, that happens.
She's a nurse. She's seen it all.
She's like, it's okay. No worries. And then they go to change the pad. And she's like, this is a lot. And it's clear. You didn't pee. I still hadn't even gotten the epidural yet. And she's like, this is your water. Your water broke. So she's like, I think you might have gone into labor today. And my doctor later came in too. And he was like, nothing you did like would have caused that here. Yeah. So he's like, you're getting induced, but like, I think you would have had your baby today. So I was like, well, that's serendipitous because it was my pops' birthday and it was really cool. Anyway, who recently passed away during COVID from COVID. Similar.
Yeah.
You know.
Hate that.
Super not fun. But it was redemptive. It was like so peaceful, so good. I just felt so giddy and so joyous and so happy and so excited. Yeah. And then holding him in my arms, like just the amount of love I felt for him and the amount of like sweetness I felt like coming off of his body and just like that experience, like trying to nurse him and cuddle him and just like, they're so special. They're so cute. There was just so much goodness oozing out of every single moment and it was so much better. I think I pushed for 20 minutes.
Wow.
So much
Far
different.
cry from 5 hours.
I mean, this birth from the time I got in there to the time I had him wasn't even 5 hours.
Right.
So I couldn't have pushed the whole time. Right. It was euphoric.
That's incredible.
It was magical.
That is so incredible. I'm so glad that you were able to have a better experience the second time around.
Me too.
That you were a completely different person going into it.
Yes.
Even. I do want to also quickly point out that you kind of prepared maybe a little different for this.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely did because I knew it was going to have to be different. Mm-hmm. So I was like, we're going to go into it with like a different headspace and knowing all the things I knew.
You knew you wanted more kids.
Yeah.
How do you get over that?
Some of it is biologically built in that we forget what the pain felt like, which is really awesome. Because otherwise I don't know if I could have. But I just got to a point where I had to do some healing. I had to do a lot of prayer and like introspective work. And I knew that ultimately like my crew wasn't here, so I would do anything. And I had to go into it like knowing that could happen again. So am I willing to do that?
Yeah.
Am I willing to have that experience again? And I really hoped and prayed that I wouldn't. And I made sure I had a doctor who would help me not have that experience. But I think I went in with my eyes like wide open.
Okay.
And that helped me. And then ultimately I just had to take a step of faith because you just don't know.
Yeah.
And I knew I wanted kids. And so
I love that.
I had to do it.
That step of faith, which I know you and you have had experiences taking steps of faith. And this is another one.
Yeah.
Probably a hard one.
It was. But I was able to genuinely get to a point of peace.
Step of faith. You took it. You're incredible. You're incredible. Oh my goodness. It is probably one of the most incredible things to see your best friend have a baby.
It really is.
It is so freaking cool to see this person that you already love and admire to become a whole new human.
Yeah.
And to see even more parts of that person that you can love and admire and just think the world of.
I feel really blessed that we were able to do it in like a very similar timeline too, because like doing motherhood with you is like a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's so amazing.
We're definitely part of each other's village.
Both times you went into the hospital, I like couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
Couldn't eat. I was so excited. I'm like eager. I'm like spamming him with questions. Like, how is she?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So crazy. All of it. It is just incredible. It's so fun to be able to be part of that, to come and bring you guys Chipotle after you have a baby, and for
Love
you
that
guys
tradition.
to come clean my whole house after I had Mila. That was a big deal. It is so cool. It's okay. We have not talked really about our husbands a lot in this episode. They did the work. They're amazing. Yeah. They're incredible. Just give a little shout out. Yeah. It is so cool to see our husbands become dads.
Oh, the best thing in the world.
I love it. It is incredible. Oh, it's so cool. It's not for the faint of heart. And I think people need to be very just cognizant going into having a human because it changes your entire life and it affects your entire life. I'm not going to say that you lose your entire life, but I'm going to say it will affect your entire life.
It's definitely like it's a brand new chapter.
Yeah.
And you take pieces from the rest of the book, but you become a wholly different human.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It definitely is extremely transformative, as we have highlighted. So yeah, just if you are thinking about having children, just be aware, be cognizant that it is not something to be taken lightly.
Yeah.
Not a decision to be made based on any other factors other than the ones that are most important, I feel like, which are that you personally are ready emotionally, mentally, physically, all of the above there, financially, because they're expensive, that you are in a good relationship, loving. Oh my gosh, I could not do this without my husband.
Yeah.
I could not do this without my husband. Single parents are on a different level.
Yeah.
Need to be given Purple Hearts medals of honor from the president straight from him, right? So, keep that in mind. If you're thinking about having children, they're incredible. They just are. It is a completely transformative moment.
Yeah,
that affects everything in your life.
I will also say, like, don't be afraid to take the leap of faith, though, too, because as much as you can prepare, you just like life goes unexpected.
Yeah.
And I think like if you want it and you're willing to put in the work for it and you feel like it's a good time, like go for it.
Yeah. I didn't feel like ready, like, okay, like I feel ready in my body to have a baby.
Right.
It was, we kind of checked off the check boxes that I had in my mind.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, let's try. That was it.
Yeah.
It was like, we hit the check boxes. That means it's go time.
Right. And for me, it was a different experience because we had been trying for so long. And so by the time we got there, people were like, are you scared? And we were like, no, we're just amped. That like we've been waiting. We are ready. We are overdue.
Right. Yeah.
You know? And so it really is such a unique experience for everyone. And, you know, you can do what you can to prepare yourself. I think the biggest thing is just like mentally and emotionally. Obviously physically too, but like mentally and emotionally to get yourself to a place where you can be open-minded and you can be ready for this giant shift and everything like that. And then let the pieces fall where they may. But babies are beautiful. Birth is real and raw and vulnerable and powerful and crazy, but it is absolutely amazing that women get to partake in that.
Yeah.
And like I said, I feel really, really blessed and just have to thank God for the experiences that I've had, the good and the hard, for getting my kids here. And however you get your kids here, God is with you and watching you, and so excited for your transition to motherhood.
Absolutely. I love that. I love those thoughts that it is such a sacred moment.
Yeah.
And he's just there the entire time.
Yeah.
And I will say, right after you have a baby, you feel like you're going a little crazy. And he's there too.
Yeah. He's there in the crazy.
He's there in the crazy. Yeah.
Oh, life is beautiful.
And surprising.
Yep.
Well, we need to wrap this up because this has
been long.
This has been really long.
Thanks for sticking it through with us here
If you did. If anyone makes it to the end of this video,
oh my goodness,
please DM us. Golden hour. If you make it to the end of this podcast episode, DM us golden hour.
Because you're the real homies.
Right. And we will highlight you on our stories or something. Anywho.
We love you guys. Thank you for listening to our birth stories. We want to encourage you to share yours too.
Yeah.
Because I really do think that listening and sharing these experiences can help bond us as women so much. And we're so grateful to be able to do this with you guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us this week on the Living Big podcast. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Join us on Instagram and TikTok for all the things, from relatable mom memes to fun girls' night ideas with your besties.
See you next week.